All right. How about that flight in? Guess that's why they call it Sin City. No, just kidding. Okay. Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. My talk is On-Demand Flow State, a framework for mental performance. This is going to be a little bit different than most of the technical stuff we've seen here today, but without further ado, first off, hi, I'm Anthony. This is a picture of me from a past life. I used to play professional baseball for 5 years, and now I joke that I'm a full-stack comedian. I slowly rolled into becoming a full-time developer after a freak accident on the field. I have a scar that I can tell you a story about if you want to flag me down after. But yeah, I got to chase my childhood dream of being a St. Louis Cardinal for a while, and I'll always be thankful for that. And now I work at Vercel, and super stoked about that as well. This whole baseball thing will become relevant in a moment, but first I'd like to make you a promise. And my promise is that you're going to learn something new about the mentality that you bring to your programming. I want you to think about thinking, the metacognition, if you're familiar with the term. Particularly today, we're going to talk about flow state. There's a lot to talk about in this field, but I want to talk about the tools that you can use to turn your flow state on and off like a light switch. The number on this slide is 0.000001%. When I made it up to AAA baseball, I get to take it to my grave that I was in the top this percentage of people at some given skill or craft. I don't tell you this, though, because I think I'm special. It's quite the opposite. I'm not exactly, if I look around a room full of professional world-class athletes, I generally kind of don't belong. I'm honestly, I could lose a foot race to a snake. I'm really not big and mighty in a weight room. So I had to come up with my own way of competing. And that was what we're talking about here today. I wanted to win the mental game. These professional sports organizations and these high-level performance organizations, they keep what they call mental performance experts on payroll. And I would annoy these people into earning their paychecks. A lot of my teammates, I felt like, kind of underutilized these folks. They were chock full of strategies for what it's like to perform under pressure, failing in front of thousands of people, succeeding in front of thousands of people, how to prepare. And so my thesis here is that I would love to see a software community where we talk about these types of things just as much as we talk about how the way our frameworks work. I want to talk about how we work. So today I hope to make a contribution to that conversation. Now, a quick guardrail. Performance doesn't equal health. Take care of the fundamentals, diet, exercise, sleep. I think we all kind of know that kind of thing. We do it or we don't. But I don't think I necessarily have anything unique to bring to that conversation. Additionally, I'm not a mental health professional. And if you have any inclination to see one of those fine folks, I strongly encourage you to do so. Performance is about getting all those last drops and really once you have that foundation, moving into higher levels of what you're able to do. So where do you think I can be helpful? Let's talk about flow state. You've probably been in a flow state before. It's probably something abstract to you right now, though, but I hope to make that more concrete and something that you feel like you can hold in your hand and, like I said, on and off like a light switch, right? I think it's important to take this from something, like I mentioned, that's abstract and difficult to really get a handle on and make it something that you're in command of. You don't have to want to be in the top whatever percentage of your field to want to be able to hold that flow state as good as you can. This can just be about, getting your work done faster so you can play more video games. This can be about getting the more work done in the same amount of time. This can just be about having a more healthy way of working through your current existing work. And so to add more shape and color to this, I usually think about flow state as a lioness on the stalk. You can look at this line and you notice decisiveness, fearlessness, that pure focus. If you look into her eyes, you suddenly feel hunted. You feel like the only thing that exists. And the other thing that I like to note here that is, I think, really, really key is if you look into the shoulders, the upper back, the legs, you notice a relaxation there. There's not tension, but there is attentiveness. And there's a big difference between those two things. So clearly, this is something that I love to study, to think about, to talk about with others. And so I'm a web developer. I write JavaScript. So I did what anybody who has written 15 minutes of JavaScript has done. I built a framework. So the primitives, the first part of my framework is that it's customizable. I'm going to offer up some primitives and some methods and modules that you can use and add to your workflow as you please. You can make them your own just how you want to. Additionally, this framework is adaptable. You can use as much or as little of this framework as I offer up. It can be as heavy or lightweight as you want. You can really apply this how you're looking for it to look. Additionally, it's portable. You can deploy these strategies and techniques on whatever it is that you choose. Our context here today is programming, but I learned this kind of thing playing sports. You can take this to whatever it is that you desire once you've really mastered the art. And then the last thing is it's a gentle learning curve, right? Like I mentioned, most folks have been in a flow state before, even if you didn't know it by name or really have that under control how you wanted to. You've probably been here before, so it's easy to get early results here. But to achieve mastery with this practice takes time, effort, and a little bit of focus, and you can eventually, as I mentioned, on and off like a light switch. So let's start diving into some of the modules here of this framework, just to give you a little roadmap of where we're going. Micro routines, that's going to be the first thing we visit. Checklisting, meditation, and mindfulness, and monitoring. So first thing, like I mentioned, we're going to visit is micro routines. Sticking to my sports theme, these are two NBA players that are given the opportunity to take a free throw, aka the thing they're paid millions of dollars to do, completely uncontested, in a stadium full of thousands of people, tens of thousands of people even usually. They are choosing to shoot imaginary basketballs and blow kisses. It's kind of ridiculous. But when you look past that surface level, these are things that these athletes do to help them be consistent. They can get into a spot where they are familiar with the successes that they've had in the past after blowing these kisses. In the case of Jason Kidd, blowing those kisses remind him that he's had success after he does this. This is coming in his near future, and he can be happy in his place. His mind starts to relax. His heart rate starts to slow. His his muscles action into familiar patterns, and he ultimately goes into a headspace where he really feels like he's in control. Also, a quick note, this is a physical thing that you're going to be doing, so keep that in mind as we keep moving. Now, on that same theme, this goes deeper than what's on your daily calendar. This isn't, eat breakfast, brush my teeth, drop the kids off at school, stand up at 8:30. Those things are important as far as, keeping you where you want to go. But this has a little bit more as far as assigned meaning to a small thing that you can do that you're in control of whenever it is that you sit down to program. So for instance, what I'm going to share here is, I'm noticing that is definite. You can't use an emoji to define a const, right? I hope not. That'd be super cursed. But my thumb tapping routine. So every time I sit down to program, maybe not every time, but when I really do feel like I want to be really quite focused that day, I will tap my thumb 4 times, tap, 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 on my laptop or the desk in front of me. And that is my physical trigger to tell my mind, hey, it's go time. Let's wake up. Let's do the thing that we're looking forward to doing here, just like blowing kisses and shooting imaginary basketballs. So this is probably my spicy hot take of the day. I scroll Reddit and I see this sentiment pretty often. It takes 15, 23, I've seen it as much as 45 minutes for an engineer to get to flow state or whatever. I don't particularly believe this. I think this should be on the order of seconds instead of minutes, as long as you're conscious about what you're able to do. I think this is something that we measured one time, and we were like, sure, that's what we're capable of doing. Let's be cool with that. But like I mentioned, 1, 2, 3, 4 taps, and I'm pretty much in. There might be something a little bit extra to do that day if I didn't get enough sleep or something or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, I think this should be seconds, not minutes. With enough practice, I really do believe that really all of us are capable of this. So yeah. As far as what micro routines aren't, just real quick for some clarity, this isn't about being 100% hard focus every time you sit down to write code. That's a great way to earn yourself into some burnout as well. You have your focus bucket, if you will, and when you go into flow state and when you start putting out that effort, you kind of start dumping out the water in the bucket, and it does take time for that bucket to begin to fill back up again. So there is a limited battery charge to this idea. So not about being 100% flow state all the time. This is more so about being consistent. And in the wise words of Aristotle, you are what you consistently do. So this is just about maintaining consistency over time. Another quick note, if you don't execute your routine, that doesn't mean that the whole day is lost, right? This is a purely additive. If this is something that you feel like you need to do as you sit down to work that day, do it and send that physical trigger that you were looking for. So reflect. What's something that you can do when you sit down to program, something that will be in your control? Maybe it's you want to rub a key. You can use mine, my 4 thumb taps. Maybe 2 thumb taps is like 50% flow state or whatever, right? So work with this, make it your own. So that's the physical side of things. Now we can move to the mental side of these things, and we can create a sort of conscious simulation entry into flow state, if you will. I think it's probably easier for me to demonstrate this by way of example. A library that I learned while I was playing baseball was DCBA, and each of these stands for a checkbox on our checklist. So the first one here is decide. This is more than, well, I guess I'm going to program today. Specificity is key here. Remember our flow state. When we're in our flow state, we have a clear, concrete direction and goal that we're going after, and we're going to do the same thing here. Instead of, I'm going to work on this ticket, you want to look for, okay, I'm going to work on number 7231. I'm going to create, reproduce this bug under a certain given set of conditions. So some specificity there to give a serious shape to the thing you're about to do. The next thing we do is we clear. Instead of subconsciously and accidentally drifting into flow state and there being that one thing that we're trying to do, we're going to consciously empty out everything else that we're thinking of. Maybe there's something bothering you. You didn't hit your high score on Pac-Man last night or whatever. But this probably takes the most. This is probably the most difficult piece of this checklist. It takes a little bit of practice. We do have, and the next module that I'm going to get into will help you with this. But tie this again back to flow state. The lioness on the stalk. You looked into her eyes and you suddenly were the only thing that existed. The next thing is take a second to breathe, relax. You remember back to the lioness, the relaxation piece that I noted. In through the nose, out through the mouth, shoulders back and down from the stomach. Just take the time to breathe and relax. Some people, they need a little bit of a physical trigger to get that relaxation piece in, but typically a concerted, focused breath on relaxation will get you there. And then the last piece of this puzzle is to act. When I learned this framework in baseball, checklist in baseball, this was attack, but we don't have to be as visceral with our keyboard. So we've now walked our way into our flow state. We are clear. We have a conscious decision that we've made where we're going, and we are relaxed and prepared and ready to go. So now we can apply, apparently, a dancing emoji was appropriate to this. So if you want to dance the best you ever did, do this, I guess. Now, as far as checklisting goes, you can start with DCBA if you want. Something that works for you. If you've never tried anything like this before, this, as you notice, DCBA kind of noted down the pieces of the puzzle as far as what a flow state looks like, right? That shape and color that we gave to it. But my only ask if you go to build your own or try to understand what it is that you want out of your checklist is to stay affirmative. And so what do I mean by that? If I tell you, don't think about the last bug you wrote, what's the first thing you start doing? Yeah, that guy's smiling because he is thinking about it already. If your brain really isn't that good at understanding absence of something, you actually want to say the things that you do want. I hope that made sense. So that's checklisting. That's kind of our flow state simulation machine. And so now we've established the sort of physical and mental pieces of a flow state. And we're going to bring in some glue code, if you will, with meditation and mindfulness. This is the piece of the puzzle that, like glue code, brings together those two pieces and holds them together. Now, you may be tuning out on this part, and I was guilty of this. I didn't really take this seriously for a long time, but this is now my favorite part of this talk. I kind of think of it a lot like Brussels sprouts. If you've never tried them, you don't know how much you love them. But in baseball land, like I mentioned, this changed everything for me. My mental game was average, I guess. I don't know. But when I started taking this seriously, I found that a lot of the things that I wanted to do to get my focus honed in on the things that I wanted, just everything just like 2x, 3x, and suddenly things were a lot easier for me to do between the years. And that's really important to do when you're competing with athletes who are probably better than you, especially in that really direct context where it's, head to head and stuff like that. I could lose really fast because I just really wasn't that good. So I had to be in the driver's seat. But I can connect that to what we do as engineers as far as, learning new tricks all day and solving puzzles all day. I'll actually double click on that learning piece. This is Bloom's taxonomy of the cognitive process. This is, generally speaking, Vercel guy, triangle. I just noticed that. This is technically what it takes to move up the pyramid of depth of understanding of something. So you start at the bottom at remembering. Basically, this is just being aware that something exists. I'll use React Server components. We've all been kind of talking about that lately. So suddenly you heard about React Server components. You know they exist. You're aware of them. Excuse me. And then you start understanding them. Okay, this piece goes here. Apparently, you can use them async. They can drag data in somehow. You start to fumble with the pieces and eventually get one working maybe, right? And then you start applying. Okay, I have data in my CMS. I want to get it into the server component, render it, and suddenly you just made your first React Server component that does something. Then you start analyzing. Okay, I can understand this pattern. These are the pros and cons I think I'm drawing out. Maybe this doesn't work for me. Maybe this won't work in my work code base for some reason. My personal project will love this though. Then you start evaluating. That's kind of the piece that I was starting to dive into there. Okay, so now I understand all these pieces. I'm starting to figure out what will work for me. And then I can meaningfully create with these React Server components. Now, that's a long-winded way of saying, notice what it takes for you to learn something. You have to get all the way from the bottom of this pyramid to the top. And like I was mentioning, you need to be in control here of your mind. You have to be able to jump through those hoops and stay online and get to where you want to go. And so where meditation comes in is that meditation is a pure practice in the art of controlling your mind. Now you may be thinking, okay, Anthony, I don't have the time to roll out a yoga mat, put on my favorite robe, burn some incense, lay down on the ground for an hour, right? But the good news is that 2 minutes of stillness exists. This is a scientifically proven way to, with a concerted effort, be able to, over time, build up some better mindfulness. The whole thing is here, you sit in your favorite chair. If you work from home, you can lay on the ground if you want. It doesn't matter. Just be physically still. Get relaxed. Then from there, you build the mental silence as well. You'll let your thoughts drift by like clouds. If you've never meditated like deeply before, your mind actually creates a stream of consciousness thoughts even when you don't try to. You may just have never noticed. And so what you do with those thoughts is you just take a step back, become a third-party observer, and let those float across like clouds in front of your mental sky, if you will, however you'd like to think about it. But over time, you'll have fewer and fewer clouds going across your mind. It'll be easier to release those clouds as they float by off the edge of your viewport, if you will. And eventually, there will be fewer clouds. Now, if you've never tried meditation before, you might feel like the young lady on this slide. Suddenly, you're like, okay, I'm just laying here trying to not think about anything, and now I'm thinking about the thing that I'm thinking about, and I don't even want to be thinking about the thing that I'm thinking about, so why am I thinking like this? And it can get really loud in there. And you might feel like our F1 driver here, racing in your mind. But notice the difference between how in control of your mind you thought you were and how you kind of aren't, actually. You're already a sharp mind, right? So how much better off would you be if you had full control? Now, what I have written on the slide is gas and brake, right? We think of race car drivers or whatever, they're just trying to go fast, baby, right? And so the way that they actually get around the track as quick as they possibly can is they need to be able to use their brake pedal just as well as their gas pedal. It's the same thing for your mind. If you can't slow down, then you probably can't speed up just as well. So if you want to, have the best lap time, if you will, if you want to have the most mental performance that you can, then you want to be able to slow down just as much as speed up. Now, there's tons of content out there that will help you focus on the ball, to keep up with my baseball puns. But 2 minutes of stillness is what I usually recommend to folks as a great time box who haven't tried out this stuff before. It gives you a really nice, just small way to create a habit every day. You can probably find 2 minutes, even if it is before going to sleep at night. That's typically a time where you're going to be still anyway. So that's a great opportunity to practice this if you don't have any other time of the day. Next thing we have is monitoring. So we have all the tools in place now. Just like software development, we want to take care of ourselves as far as developing, shipping, and iterating and understanding the things that we've put into practice. This can be as simple as keeping a voice memo, using an app, writing it down in a notebook, spreadsheet, whatever it is. My only recommendation is to keep it light. We want to focus our attention on the actual flow state practices that we're putting into place instead of, building a super sweet app to keep a 1 to 10 count every day, right? What I just alluded to there, 1 to 10 self-assessment is actually pretty accurate. As long as you're being honest with yourself as far as what you're capable of. If you write down in your notebook, today I got into kind of like a 6 with the quality of my flow state. And you start to keep that, just write down a number every day, right? You have a number and you start to see, I'm seeing 3s and 4s a lot, maybe I need to make some changes. So you can take care of yourself that way and give yourself a way to keep track of yourself and understand the impact of the things that you're doing. So to start wrapping things up, some of you may be thinking to yourselves, okay, this all sounds great and whatever, but you're not acknowledging that I have like 10,000 distractions in a day. I have to sit through 25 hours of meetings every day. And, I can't really just like sit and focus, man. But there's actually a reason that I did this. These are all things, if you think back to the things that I've recommended here, these are all things that you control. Nobody can take these things away from you. And making your flow state into a habit depends on you. Whatever your motivations were, right? Like I said, maybe you just want to play more video games. Maybe you want to earn that raise with better quality work, whatever it is, right? Environment is probably a whole separate talk, dealing with distractions, dealing with outside forces that aren't the things that you can control. But like I said, these are all things that you can control. And as far as distractions go, we can get into and out of flow state with these practices a little better, right? Alluding back to that seconds, not minutes, that I was talking about earlier. So there's really a lot that you can do by yourself, even without trying to take care of those things that you don't have control of. In baseball land, we would talk about this as control your controllables. So hopefully that lands. The second thing I'd like to say is I'm incredibly inspired by my fellow speakers and the greater tech community that I get to be a part of today. I hope I've persuaded you to at least look within yourself a little bit and think about thinking. Learn how to learn and consider the very first input to every line of code you've ever produced yourself. At a community level, I think we can talk about this. As you can see here, I have Reddit posts that I would love to see converted into what I think is a more ideal state. Instead of waiting for burnout to happen, we can engage with our minds earlier and address the illness with preventative measures instead of trying to cure the symptoms. We can deal with these things instead of digging a hole that we're trying to get out of ourselves. We just can never dig the hole in the first place. And the last thing I'll wrap up with is that for some of you, this may sound like a pipe dream. I know that these things can sound pretty far off, but I promise you they're closer than you think. Think about this the next time someone mentions DX or UX. When we think about React, a lot of the time we think about a tool that allows us to put away all the stuff that we don't want to think about and stay on the things that we do want to think about. I'm talking about the same thing. Instead of talking about the actual tool that you work with, I'm just talking about yourself. I just want us to take that underlying current and probably make it into an overarching theme. Together, I believe that this is possible for us, and I'd encourage you to think about thinking about it.